Welcome in, everybody. It is Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson, not coming to you from my respective home here in Nashville. I'm out at First Horizon Park as the Nashville Sounds get ready to have the second game of their six-game series with the Charlotte Knights tonight here in downtown Nashville. That is my buddy Calvin White coming to you from his home up in the Clarksville area. Calvin, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm glad we finally got you in here after we experienced some technical difficulties behind the scenes before we started the show. But hopefully we can keep everything running smoothly. Give the people another good show here on Wild and Wacky Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. The sun coming from the outfield through the glass is absolutely glaring in my face. So bear with me if I'm squinting at you per se. But as Calvin mentioned, looking forward to having another good show here on Main Street Sports today. In the second hour, no Heather Williams today. She's our normal 3:40 segment. She's out doing on assignment. The NASCAR Cup Series Media Day for their playoff drivers is today. So we'll look forward to catching up with Heather next week after the first round of the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs at Darlington. I know that's a topic that Calvin is really excited to talk about. But nonetheless, we'll talk a little NASCAR in the second hour. Also preview the upcoming Music City Grand Prix here at Nashville Superspeedway on Sunday as INDYCAR wraps up its series on the banks up in Gladeville. I'm looking forward to talking that with Calvin. Be sure to tune in for our coverage from Main Street Nashville and the Wilson Post between Blaine Keller and I this weekend as we tackle the track. Coming up, though, we've continued to tear through our SEC football previews, and we will continue to wrap that up this week as the college football slate here in the South, at least with the SEC teams, prepares to kick off on Saturday all across the country. We'll talk with Matt Stahl of AL.com. He'll join us here just shortly at 2:20 as we preview the Alabama Crimson Tide. A lot of question marks come into this year. Obviously, there's a lot of expectation when you hear that word Alabama. A lot of expectation, obviously, on Ty Simpson as he takes over for Jalen Milroe in that quarterback spot. So looking forward to talking to Matt Stahl of AL.com just shortly as we continue to do our SEC previews with the Alabama Crimson Tide. We're also going to get into the grab bag here at 3 o'clock. We'll talk some news and notes across regional, local, and national sports. We'll also talk a little Braves, Calvin. They're up right now down in Miami, trying to win the series against the Fish down in Miami. So looking forward to talking a little Braves as well. Calvin, yesterday y'all continued the SEC previews. How did that go with you and Wade?
They've gone good. We finally got into, the powerhouses of the conference. Your Georgias, and we talked LSU last week. We're going to get into Alabama today, kind of get back into those teams that are expected to finish in the top tier of the conference. I'm excited to talk about, what year two under Kalen DeBoer is going to look like at Alabama. If the Crimson Tide can kind of get back to being a realistic national championship and SEC contender.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward to having a jam-packed show for you guys here on this Wild and Wacky Wednesday. Without further ado, producer Mark, let's get into the last scores in today's schedule on the rundown.
This is the rundown.
NCAA action last night across the mid-state. Here's your final volleyball scores. Culleoka over Battle Creek, 3-1. It's Blackman pulling the sweep over Oakland in district play. Also, Columbia Central pulling the sweep over Tullahoma 3-0. It's Columbia Academy 3, Zion Christian nothing. Cookeville 3, Stewart's Creek 1 in district 7 3A action. It's Murfreesboro Central Magnet pulling out the win over Forest in 5 sets 3-2. It was Gallatin defeating Mount Juliet 3-0 in district 12 3A. Summertown sweeps Hampshire. Warren County also sweeps Laverne. It was Lincoln County pulling out a 5-set win over Lawrence County last night. It was Mount Pleasant falling to Loretto 3-0. Westmoreland picked up the 3-0 win over Macon County. It was Middle Tennessee Christian defeating Providence Christian in 4 sets last night 3-1. It was Siegel sweeping Riverdale 3-0. Eagle defeating Santa Fe 3-0 as well. Smyrna with the sweep over White County 3-0. And Spring Hill with the sweep over Marshall County 3-0. Girls soccer action. Battle Creek 5, Lawrence County 2. It was Blackman with a 2-1 win over rival Siegel. It was CPA 4, Brentwood 2. Columbia Central 6, Coffee County 1 in district action there. It was Spring Hill 2-1 victors over Columbia Academy. It was Fairview all over Creekwood 9-0. Franklin blanked Franklin County 5-0. Friendship Christian 9-0 win over Ezel Harding in district play last night as well. It was Gallatin 5, Centennial to nothing. It was Grace Christian Franklin 9-0 victors over Middle Tennessee Christian. Hillsboro defeated Cane Ridge 7-1. It was Independence blanking Beach 7-0. Zion Christian with the 9-2 win over Lead Academy. It was Lebanon pulling out a 4-3 win over Portland last night. Murfreesboro Central, Magnet, and Knowlesville tied last night, 1 apiece. It was Providence Christian 4. I don't know who this homeschool is, excuse me. 4-3. It was a Providence Christian victory last night. It was Riverdale 2, Oakland 1 in district play there. It was White House Heritage picking up the 4-2 win over Springfield up in Robertson County. Stewart's Creek blanked Smyrna 9-0. It was White House defeating Hume Fall 1-0. In Major League Baseball last night, the Braves evened the series against the Marlins down in Miami. They defeated them 11-2 thanks to a 9-run ninth inning. It was the Rockies defeating the Astros last night 6-1. Here at First Horizon Park last night, it was the Charlotte Knights defeating the Nashville Sounds 7-3. In the W, the Indiana Fever picked up a 95-75 win over the Seattle Storm. And it was the Phoenix Mercury defeating the Los Angeles Sparks 92-84. Those were the last night's scores, both locally and nationally.
A little bit lighter schedule than yesterday for tonight's games. High school volleyball action. Friendship Christian is at Middle Tennessee Christian at 5:45. Springfield is at Gallatin at 6 p.m. And Oakland is at Coffee County at 6:30. The Lone Girls Soccer matchup of the night, Valor Collegiate is at Republic at 5 p.m. Over in Major League Baseball, the Braves are still down in Miami playing the Marlins. That game is underway right now. On FanDuel Sports Southeast, the Braves are up 11-1 in the bottom of the 6th inning. And then first pitch for the Rockies and the Astros is at 7:10 p.m. Minor League Baseball, the Charlotte Knights are at the Nashville Sounds. First pitch for that game was set for 6:35. And finally, in the WNBA, the Las Vegas Aces are at the Atlanta Dream at 6:30 on NBA TV. And the Connecticut Sun are at the Dallas Wings at 7 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, those were your scores. That was your schedule. And that concludes today's rundown.
Our top story today is brought to you by the good folks down at the Piggly Wiggly and Neely's Mill in Columbia. They serve daily lunch from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. They also offer hand-cut meats, and everything is cost plus 10 at the cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill in Columbia. Presenting you our top story, and Calvin, this is something I guess that I have followed, just personally, just for those of us that like a little drama. Obviously, we know with Tom Brady retiring several years ago, then deciding he wanted to play football one more season, and then retiring again after a long and obviously Hall of Fame career. First ballot with the New England Patriots and finishing up with the Tampa Bay Bucks. We knew he signed a big contract to go with Fox, but we also knew that he was going to be the minority owner after he bought a claim with the Las Vegas Raiders. He transitions to the Fox booth. Obviously he is kind of rooting for the Raiders at heart. And the NFL addressed it his first year going into the booth, not allowing him per se to go into the meetings, the production meetings that Fox and every other TV station would meet with the teams and the players, etc., before games. Well, that rule has now been adjusted by the NFL via Andrew Marchand of theathletic.com. The league will now allow Tom Brady to participate in those production meetings as he prepares for his broadcast with Fox, talks to the team, talk to the players. Per the report, though, Brady is still expected to be barred from attending practices that media routinely do before the game. The report does not address whether he would continue to be prevented from entering the facilities of other teams and or the hotel of a team that is on the road given for a game. So Brady was allowed to participate in the production meetings prior to the Super Bowl this past year, though, between the Chiefs and the Eagles. So, Calvin, obviously, this is kind of an interesting dynamic. We have a player in the booth who obviously has the astute knowledge, per se, of a Tom Brady, a Hall of Famer, who also is a minority owner in the league, and there's a vesting interest for him, obviously, we've seen him on the sidelines throughout fall camp and with the Raiders. There's an interest for him there. So, kind of talk to me about what you think of this news.
Yeah, this was one of the first things I thought about whenever it was announced that he was going to be a minority owner in the Raiders. Obviously he can use some of that like if he was allowed to go to practice, obviously he can use some of that stuff from watching other teams that he's learned to kind of, give the Raiders an advantage. Obviously the league doesn't want to let that happen, but as someone who did, you know, a small bit of TV production work in college, obviously it's not the same level type stuff as what Tom Brady's doing at Fox, but it's super hard to do that type of stuff and feel like you're prepared if you're not allowed to go to, production meetings and, not have access to as much information as you might have if you were allowed to, go to practices and talk to players and coaches before the games and things like that. So really watching some of the games that Tom Brady called last year, um, obviously we've known about his work ethic for a long time. He's, the best quarterback of all time. That's one of the things that he was known for was that just killer work ethic. So I kind of figured he was going to be good at the whole TV thing from the jump, but it's kind of more impressive how good he was at it in his first year with the limitations that he had, not being able to go to practice and see what teams are doing week in and week out, and talk to players and coaches before the games and things like that.
Yeah, and it is important to note in just reading this article written by NBC Sports. Brady was allowed last year if he wanted to, and I'm sure he did, to make individual phone calls towards players, coaches, teams, whatever he needed to gather information for the game, his preparation. Obviously, we know Brady is an astute mind, per se, to be able to break down things and understand concepts and what teams are trying to do. So Tom was able to do those things, but as you mentioned, the I guess the value, per se, as a analyst, I mean, that his job isn't play by play. Obviously, it's to break down what happens on the field. I remember when Tony Romo joined the CBS booth with Jim Nance, and those first couple years, Tony could see the coverage of the defense, and he could call out the play or call out the coverage, per se. And he could see the alignment of the offense, and he could call out, what they were trying to do and the matchups they were looking for. And, it's just like he was Nostradamus up there. And, Tom has that ability to do that too, to diagnose coverage, to understand, what the defense is trying to do, what the offense is trying to run. But also you have to understand the things that they do in practice, right? I mean, there's a script, obviously. They practice their first set of plays. And so I'm just looking forward to I thought that was a really interesting nugget. I think we all knew some people feel some type of way, per se, if he called a Raiders game, per se, with the other team. He's the minority owner, so of course he's going to have a vesting stake in the outcome of the game. So the Brady rules, per se, by the NFL getting lessened a little bit as he prepares to enter his second season in the Fox booth, I believe, with Kevin Burkhardt. So that's something to note moving forward. I know football is upon us. I don't know, per se, what that first Fox game on Big Fox of the year. I do know the first big CBS game in the 325 window that I believe will have the A crew for CBS will be the Packers and Lions week 1 at Lambeau Field. So, and important to note for Tom Brady as he not only continues his broadcasting career, per se, but hopefully to get the Raiders up and coming with a new quarterback in Geno Smith and Pete Carroll coming down from out of retirement, really, the oldest coach in the NFL. So looking forward to having the NFL kickoff here very soon. Got a jam-packed show for you today on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedics Alliance of Columbia. Coming up after the break, we'll be joined by Matt Stahl of AL.com. We're going to talk all things Alabama as they get ready to kick off their season this weekend down in Tallahassee against the Florida State Seminoles. It's Matt Stahl of AL.com coming up next here on Main Street Sports Today. Stick with us.
Winning just got closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs. Winning just got closer.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Busy bee, yeah, busy bee. If you need.
Hold on, y'all, hold on. I need to make a call. Hey, this is Brianna with Busy Bee. I'm giving you a call to let you know your technician is on his way.
833.
Bee, oh, busy bee. Guys, not yet. Not yet.
Busy bee, oh,
Now
busy
ready,
bee.
guys.
Call 775-7833.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Welcome back in. It is Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson, coming to you from First Horizon Park. This afternoon as the Sounds look to continue their 6-game homestand against the Charlotte Knights. That is Calvin White coming to you from his home up in the Clarksville area. Looking forward to continuing our SEC previews here today on Main Street Sports Today. We're going to continue talking a little Alabama Crimson Tide, obviously one of the storied programs, not only of recent note, but of college football history. But before we get into the Crimson Tide, Calvin, you and Wade talked a little football yesterday, a little Georgia football, talked a little Kirby Smart. So what did you learn about the Bulldogs as they head into their opener on Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, it's from what we learned yesterday, it's, on paper it looks like Georgia's defense is, not going to be to the level of those defenses that kind of helped lead them to multiple national championships the last couple of years, but it is going to be better than it was last year. It wasn't going to be, it was going to be easy to be better than what they were last year. They gave up their most yards per game in almost a decade, gave up their most points per game, I think since 2016. And, they still found a way to win the SEC, made the college football playoff. But, their offense is, kind of going to be a question mark going into the year with, Gunnar Stockton at quarterback as a starter for the first year after playing behind Carson Beck last year. So it'll be interesting to watch. I never, as long as Kirby Smart is there, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where we talk about or where we don't have Georgia in the SEC and national championship title conversation.
Well, before he joined the coaching staff at Georgia as head coach, he was the former defensive coordinator at the University of Alabama. And we're pleased to be joined right now by Matt Stahl of AL.com to preview the upcoming season for the Crimson Tide. Matt, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Doing good, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Jumping right into it, Matt. Before we kind of jump into this year per se, let's put a bow on last year. Obviously, the first year under Kalen DeBoer as the new coach down at Alabama, taking over for the GOAT per se, and Nick Saban. Up and down season for the Crimson Tide last year. You're thinking after Ryan Williams is running down the sideline against Georgia, that it's the same old Alabama. And then, they have tough losses throughout the regular season in SEC play, not only to Vanderbilt, but to Tennessee and Oklahoma as well. A very up and down, Jekyll and Hyde per se, Alabama program. Just kind of give me your real quick takeaways from last year from your point of view.
Yeah, I think it was a disappointing season, which is wild to say that about a 9-win season with a first-year head coach. Like generally, that's sort of seen as a good thing, but Nick Saban was what he was. There were moments. I mean, they won that game against Georgia. That was one of the best games of the year. Blew out LSU in Baton Rouge, but like just in general handled success really poorly. It seemed like, right after that Georgia game, there's the Vanderbilt game that they lost. They lose to another like a mediocre Oklahoma team. Tennessee was a very good team, so I don't think that's like that one wasn't the end of the world. I don't think, but yeah, it just needed to be more consistent than it was, and yeah, it led to them missing the playoff.
And I have to ask you, heading into obviously year 2 now, a new quarterback, obviously Ty Simpson taking over or for Jalen Milroe. We'll get into Ty here shortly, a kid from the state of Tennessee. We want to hit on him specifically, but there's pressure when you're at the University of Alabama taking over for Nick Saban. So heading into year 2 for Kalen DeBoer, how have you kind of seen him adjust per se to second year on the job? And if any, is that seat warm for him if Alabama does not find itself in the playoff mix this year?
I don't know how warm the seat's gonna get like this year, especially in the era where like I'm not sure how. I'm just not positive we're gonna see these like super expensive coach firings as much going forward, given that you now have a $20 million line item to pay players. But yeah, I think he's handled like everything in well, sort of taking it in stride. He's recognized that like it wasn't acceptable effort here by Alabama standards last year. That the consistency needs to be better. Bringing in Ryan Grubb as the new offensive coordinator, I think, is really going to help on that front. Like the offense was just again inconsistent last year, but you got players now who've been in this system for a year, offensively and defensively. Like Kane Womack came in and completely changed what Nick Saban had going there. Changed the defensive system and had a lot of guys who were in their first year in it. There's some freshmen playing last year. Xavier Brown was a true freshman starting at cornerback. So I think everybody's handled it about as well as you can, and that got to see the consistency on the field. I think is like going to be the biggest thing.
Matt, you mentioned Ryan Grubb. Before we kind of get into Ty Simpson in his own right, I kind of want to group those two together, Ty Simpson and Ryan Grubb. First year starting quarterback, first year offensive coordinator. Obviously, Ryan Grubb worked with Kalen DeBoer at Washington. But, what do you think that offense is going to look like, this year with a first year offensive coordinator and a first year starter at quarterback?
I think you're going to see maybe just more of a pass first offense than they had at times last year. Like Jalen Milroe sort of had, I mean, his just super distinctive skill set, right? Like he was probably the fastest guy on that offense. He was the number one rushing threat. He could throw bombs all day, but a little 15-yarder sometimes was tricky. He'd make some baffling decisions. So like, I think the switch to Simpson is going to be more of a thing than like the Grubb situation. Like he's just worked with Kalen so long at so many places. I mean, they worked back together, like starting back at like Sioux Falls in like 2008. They've known each other a long time. I think Grubb is like, he's a good counterpunch. Kalen is so just like relaxed, very positive presence in a lot of rooms. And, I think it helps just the dynamics of a team to have a guy who can sort of be the bad guy, really chew people out, do the things that maybe you saw we all saw the videos of Nick Saban yelling at people. Maybe just having some of that in the room, I think, can be helpful, like a little good cop, bad cop situation. So, but I mean, I think it'll be different. But like in the end, it is Kalen DeBoer's system, so like it's not going to be like too different. I don't believe.
Continuing on with the Ty Simpson theme, Matt, in today's world of college football, transfer portal is a thing. Quarterbacks hop in and hop out at will. Ty Simpson stays, waited his turn per se. Had some moments where he played, but waited his turn to get the starting job in Alabama, and he won it this offseason. Before we can get into his skill set per se and what he can present offensively, what does it say about the person, the individual? When we live in an era where there's people transferring for more money, things of that nature, that he stayed at Alabama and kind of waited his turn and earned the job.
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows. I mean, he's a smart kid. He's a coach's kid, right? Like his dad, Jason Simpson, is the head coach at UT Martin. So like he knows, I think, more than perhaps some other guys know that like the grass isn't always greener elsewhere. He had a year in Kalen DeBoer's system. He was certainly sounded like behind the scenes he was really developing well. So I think, especially with 2 seasons of eligibility here, like there was a thought of like, why upset the apple cart? Like if things go really badly, I get you can always go at another time. But it built up so much kind of equity in the room around the team that it's just leaving didn't I don't think seemed like the smart choice to him. And yeah, here he is. He's the starter.
Matt, Alabama goes to Georgia and to Auburn this year. It'll be Kalen DeBoer's, the first time he's ever coached in Jordan-Hare and Sanford Stadium. Just, those are probably the 2 toughest road games they have on their schedule, along with Florida State to open the season. Just how do he's never coached in, Sanford Stadium and Jordan-Hare. So how do you think he kind of handles those road matchups this year?
I mean, I think he'll be fine. Like, I mean, he was at Washington, right? Like, it's not like he was playing, like, coaching in front of just empty stadiums all the time in what was the Pac-12 back then. Like he's coached in big time moments before. I mean, he's coached a national championship game, right? Like it's he knows what he's getting into at this point. I think Alabama could stand to play better on the road. Like there's been times where they've not started fast, so that's going to be a big deal. The one that if I'm Alabama, concerns me the most is that Auburn game at the end of the season because I mean that stadium's haunted, so you got to you got to deal with that on top of everything else. But like just the idea of like coaching in front of like a rowdy crowd in the SEC, uh, that just is what it is. I think I don't think it's a huge concern at this point.
Matt, we've been in talking to you here for 9 minutes, and we'd be remiss not to talk about Ryan Williams, one of the most dynamic and electric players in college football. Him and Jeremiah Smith, 1 and 2 in my mind, when it comes just the most elite, prolific playmakers at the college level on the outside. What does this offseason look like him for per se? Obviously, he set the world ablaze last year as a freshman at Alabama. What does this offseason look like for him, and how does he kind of improve to continue to take his game to the next level?
Yeah, I think he's gained a little bit of weight. He has another year in the system. Sounds like he's done all the right things in the offseason. I think the big thing for him is I think that receiver room is going to be a lot better top to bottom. I think they had a lot of people hit the portal after the season and then kind of rebuilt it from there. Obviously, Jeremy Bernard, who got a lot of the catches kind of later in the year when defenses started really keying in on Ryan. He's back for another year. They bring in Isaiah Horton, the Miami transfer, who's also just more of he's taller than both the other two. I think he's maybe a little more of an over the top threat than what you get some elsewhere on the field. So I think he's going to take a lot of pressure off of Ryan. And then even behind him, like Jalen Hale was supposed to be a major contributor last season, suffered like a pretty gnarly leg injury uh, before any of it. So he was out all year recovering from that. He's back. Coaches think he's doing all the right things. Rico Scott's he's been around a few years now, supposed to be the fastest player on the team. He'll be providing depth like across the board. I think it's going to be a better receiver room. And I think that's going to benefit Ryan just by like not having to shoulder all the load offensively anymore.
Matt, I'm looking at odds here from ESPN. ESPN has Alabama. They've given him the fifth highest odds to win the national championship. Tied with Clemson. Obviously, for at least most of my lifetime, Alabama's never not been talked about as a legitimate national championship and SEC title contender. But a rough season, like you said last year. Despite the 9 wins, kind of up and down. Do you think that this year's Alabama team can, realistically win the national championship?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it obviously won't be easy. Texas is really, really good. I mean, there's a lot of Clemson's really, really good this year. Like, there's a lot of, but I think they're definitely like I think it would be a disappointing year if they didn't make the playoff and didn't make a little run in it. Like national championship, I think it's hard to call the national championship at this point because like I would have predicted Notre Dame would be playing in the national championship last year, but they got their chance and they play well in the playoffs. Like it's about playing well when that you get to that like the 12 team bracket there. So yes, I think they Alabama could be a playoff contender, but I mean, it's gonna it's gonna depend on whether A, they find that consistency that they were missing last year, and B, like how are you playing when it comes to the 12-team bracket?
And then, kind of along with quarterback, pass rush was one of those things that people were kind of talking about with Alabama. That was an area that they absolutely had to, improve on. We got used to all those teams with Nick Saban that just had absolute game wreckers on that defensive line and in that secondary. How is the pass rush kind of shaping up, for Alabama this year and maybe even that defense as a whole going into the season?
Yeah, defense. Well, looks like Tim Keenan is going to be out for at least a few weeks here. Gonna have tightrope surgery. It sounds like in his ankle, so he's going to be out. That's a pretty big loss for them up front. He was really talented. But I mean, still got James Smith there on the interior, and I think there's some of the younger guys who could step up for Keenan there. The big question to me is going to be LT Overton at that what Kane Womack calls the bandit, and the rest of us just call a defensive end position. He had a lot of pressures last year. Seemed like he was getting in the backfield a lot and just couldn't put quarterbacks on the ground. He's apparently worked on that a lot all off season. So I'm really intrigued to see just like what he can kind of bring to the table there. And then Quay Rousseau as well, more on again, a position that Alabama calls the wolf and everybody else just calls an edge rusher. Be in that spot, and I think he has potential to be really talented pass rusher this season too.
Matt Stahl of AL.com joining us here on Main Street Sports today as we continue our SEC previews. Matt, before we get into the schedule as a whole, as Calvin has kind of been alluding to per se, it kicks off this weekend down in Tallahassee against Florida State. And I guess before we get into more specific questions, the Tide shouldn't lack any motivation considering, I guess, the chirping per se that's come out of Florida State camp with Thomas Castellanos. So just kind of give me your thoughts on this matchup and, an early test for Alabama and Coach Kalen DeBoer on the road, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what's going to happen depends on what Florida State actually is this season. Uh, you know, 2 years ago, they probably should have made the playoffs, got left out in favor of Alabama. Last year, they very much shouldn't have made the playoffs because they were 2-10, and all the transfers they brought in just didn't work at all. So seemingly with every Mike Norvell Florida State team, it takes a lot of it's really determined by how the transfers all fit together. I think they got 8 on offense and a bunch on defense too, including Castellanos, who, I mean, he is sort of the archetype that gave Alabama some trouble last year. Diego Pavia can run. He gave Alabama some issues, clearly. Jackson Arnold, then of Oklahoma, now of Auburn, same deal. He just couldn't stop the running quarterback. So it's an early test to see if Alabama has sort of fixed that issue. But, I mean, I would expect Alabama to win the game, just barring something just weird happening,
Ryan, a couple years
Go,
ago, we
Calvin.
saw Ryan. A couple years, I mean, excuse me. I was asking a question about Ryan Williams. I called you Ryan. I'm sorry, Matt. A couple years ago,
It's easy to get us confused. Don't worry.
Matt. A couple years ago, we saw Devontae Smith win the Heisman Trophy at the wide receiver position at Alabama. Obviously, we saw what Ryan Williams could do last year. Do you think that he kind of fits that mold of someone who could, not necessarily win the Heisman, but can certainly enter that conversation from the wide receiver position?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of that depends on how well Ty Simpson works out there. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's talented. Clearly, one of the better receivers in college football right now. Like, if I was gonna bet on a receiver to win the Heisman, I'd take a look at Jeremiah Smith first. I think he's just much more like I don't know how to describe it, but he's maybe more of the archetype of receiver who would historically win the Heisman. But I mean, Ryan Williams reminds you more of Devontae Smith than he does. So you never know. I think he certainly has the talent to do it, but he'll show it on the field this season.
Matt, looking here at the projected order of finish in the SEC, Alabama's picked to finish third behind the programs that you've kind of alluded to, the preseason number 1 in Texas and obviously Georgia. The gap, though, obviously Texas and Georgia making it to the playoff last year. Where do you think there's a difference per se in the levels of those programs? Do you think Alabama talent wise is in the same conversation per se when it comes to those two programs that are kind of picked atop the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably right around the same level, and I mean, Texas just sort of has more of its talents kind of blossoming at the moment. Like, there's more known entities, I think, with Texas going into this season than some of the uh, in Georgia, especially. Like, could not tell you what Gunnar Stockton is going to turn into a quarterback, but uh, yeah, I mean, I think it's close. Bama plays Georgia, doesn't play Texas. So I mean, that's the sort of thing you could see. I mean, you could tell me any of those three teams end up in Atlanta, any two of those three teams, and just wouldn't be surprised at all. I think they're obviously. I mean, you look at like talent composites, recruiting rankings, and all that through the years, whatever they're worth anymore, and like yeah, they're all sort of right there together.
Matt, kind of looking at Alabama's schedule as a whole, like we mentioned, they open the season at Florida State, then they play Louisiana Monroe at home, Wisconsin at home, then they're on the road at Georgia, Vanderbilt at home, at Missouri, Tennessee at home, at South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois at home, and then they finish the season on the road at Auburn for the Iron Bowl. You know, you mentioned it, 9 wins last year, but people were disappointed. It was an up and down season for Alabama. Just how many wins do you kind of see on that schedule for Alabama this year?
Uh, I mean, it's one of those weird things. Anywhere between 8 and 15, it's so hard to call at this point. Now, I do think after everybody in the SEC just spent the entire offseason complaining about it, I think 9 wins, if you're an SEC team, depending on the 3 losses, probably get you into the playoff this year. Right? Like I think if you're the ACC or the Big 12, you better start going undefeated because you're getting screwed by the committee from here on out. Uh, but yeah, I think there's not a game looking at the schedule that I don't think is like not winnable for Alabama. There's some where I'm like, boy, going to Georgia is going to be really, really hard. You know, I don't know what LSU is this year. Like LSU looks like they could be really, really talented, and they've got their quarterback back. So like you have that game at Bryant Denny, but like that could go either way. Auburn, I don't care if they're 0-11 when they play. I'm not gonna completely believe in Alabama playing in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Going to South Carolina. Like I feel like South Carolina is going to regress a little bit this year, but you don't know, and they have like one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. So, like to me, it's especially in this sort of era of college football, it's almost an unpredictable thing. Like I think they'll be very, very good, but like I don't necessarily want to put a number on which games are winnable or not.
Right. That is Matt Stahl of AL.com, kind enough to join us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedics Alliance of Columbia. Matt, appreciate you taking some time out of your Wednesday to join us. Enjoy the college football slate that begins, I believe, tomorrow night with Georgia Tech and Colorado kicking off. So it should be a jam-packed weekend. So we hope you enjoy it, and thanks again for taking some time.
Hey, y'all too. Thanks for having me.
That is Matt Stahl of AL.com, joining us to continue our SEC previews for the college football season that as soon as kicking off. Coming after the break, we'll get into a little Braves action and some MLB news and notes across the world of Major League Baseball. Braves looking to go for the series win tonight, or I guess this afternoon rather, here in Miami. We'll break it all down next here on Main Street Sports Today. So stick with us.
They walk among us, but at 240 miles per hour, they become something more. They're thrill seekers, risk takers, and maybe just a little bit unhinged. Buckle up. This new era of speed, this racing revolution, it's just getting started.
Columbia Power and Water Systems is dedicated to bringing our customers reliable, local service. Whether you're turning on a light switch, your faucet, or streaming on TV, our dedicated team members from here in Murray County work work every day to keep you on. If you need us, call us 931-388-4833 or visit cpws.com. CPWS, local service, local support.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
This day in Braves history, August 27th, 1949, former Brave Jeff Heath ties the game with a pitch hit home run and then later homers to win it with another blast against Cincinnati. Heath became the first player in Major League Baseball history at the time to hit a pitch hit home run and then homer again in the same game. The feat would not happen again for another 36 years across the Major League Baseball. That is today's day in Braves history, August 27th. 1949. Another good result last night for the Braves down in Miami as they continue to play better baseball down the stretch. Victors over the Miami Marlins last night, 11-2 at the Fish Tank. Two-homer night for Ozzie Albies, who's started to get a little hot here late before we get into today's game. He's been swinging a good bat. Homered again this afternoon. Also had a two-run single. So Ozzie Albies swinging the bat a little better. Two-homer night last night for Ozzie. And the Braves scored 9 runs in the ninth inning to defeat the Marlins. Hurston Waldrop, absolutely phenomenal last night again. The former number 1 overall pick, first-round pick, per se, out of the University of Florida, returning back to the state of Florida. 5.1 innings pitched last night, 8 hits, just 1 earned run. So Calvin, obviously not in the playoff mix where Braves fans want to be, per se. But, there are positives that Mo and I and I guess fellow Braves fans are starting to take when it comes to this season. And one of them is obviously the, emergence, per se, of Hurston Waldrop. And then the other is Michael Harris coming to find himself. But the first one I mentioned, Hurston Waldrop, a guy that really, at the All-Star break, per se, even before the trade deadline, you didn't really put into the Braves pitching plans, per se, for 2026. Well, now he has played his way into that the way he's kind of taken the ball and ran with it with all the injuries in the Braves rotation.
Yeah, he's been a really nice addition to that pitching staff. Especially after the way the season's gone, up until the All-Star break. Chris Sale got hurt. Spencer Strider was hurt for most of the first half of the year, and even ever since he's been back, he hasn't had the season that we're used to him having. He had probably his best outing of the year the other night against Miami, and the Braves lost another 1-run game, 2-1. Hurston Waldrop this year, 4-0 with a .90 ERA. He's been a really nice addition to that pitching staff and to the team, along with, like you said, Michael Harris's resurgence since the All-Star break, and along with Drake Baldwin kind of being in that National League Rookie of the Year race. Drake Baldwin's, been a really nice addition to, kind of give Sean Murphy a break behind the dish every now and then.
Yeah, and I'm not going to steal Brandon Gotton's thunder, per se. He mentioned this last night on the broadcast. I remember overhearing it. Drake Baldwin in the conversation, as you mentioned, for NL Rookie of the Year. He's been up since the beginning of the year, and you don't even really think of him as a rookie anymore. At the high school level, Calvin, we often hear coaches say when you get halfway or three-fourths of the way through the season that freshmen are no longer freshmen; they're sophomores. Sophomores are no longer sophomores; they're juniors. Juniors are no longer juniors; they're seniors. And we've seen that growth and maturation from Drake Baldwin this year. Last night, as I mentioned, it was a 9-run ninth inning that keyed the Braves to an 11-2 victory. Former Marlin Vidal Brujan got things started in the ninth inning with a double to left that scored Eli White, and just the kind of floodgates open. You mentioned Drake Baldwin, a 2-run single in the ninth as well. Ronald Acuna gets a bases-loaded walk. Eli White bats around, hits a single, and then Ozzy Albies hits a 3-run home run in the ninth. All damage done by the Braves in their final at bat. And they carried that momentum over to today, Calvin. You mentioned in the rundown the Braves all over the Marlins. I think you at the time said it was 11-1. It is now 12-1 as they have hit the bottom of the eighth inning down in South Beach. The Braves got things going early on. Jurickson Profar led off the game with a solo homer off of Ryan Gusto. Matt Olson hit a 2-run shot off the facade of the second deck in the third inning. One batter later, Ronald Acuna gets plunked on the first pitch, and the bench is clear in Miami. So I don't know if I had that in my bingo card per se for the Braves and Marlins in the dog days of August with both teams floating around 10 games below 500. But the Braves got things going. I mentioned Ozzy Albies, a 2-run single in the fifth inning that scored Ronald Acuna Jr. and Jurickson Profar. Michael Harris got things going with a single in the fourth, hit a 2-run homer in the sixth, and then Profar hit his second home run of the game just a while ago in the seventh inning. So Jurickson Profar, a guy that kind of frustrated Braves fans. I was trying to find the right word. Comes over, signs the free agent deal. Braves looking for a left fielder. He's suspended for most of the season, and he's played his way back into their plans, obviously, for left field in the future. As of right now, hitting 268, and he's shown the power here of late. So a nice leadoff hitter per se for a guy that can make contact, something that the Braves need in their lineup.
Yeah, going into the year, he was supposed to be the guy that kind of plugged the hole that the Braves have had in left field over the last couple of years. Obviously Marcell Ozuna's probably seen the bulk of that time out in left field, but I think anybody that watches the Braves consistently would tell you that Marcell Ozuna's a much better hitter than he is a defender. So obviously you want Marcell Ozuna's bat in the lineup, but you don't necessarily want his defense out there unless you absolutely have to. So Jurickson Profar was supposed to be that guy that kind of provided some stability and consistency to that left field spot where you can kind of plug Marcell Ozuna into that DH spot and kind of just let him swing freely, just focus on his offense. When Jurickson Profar got suspended early on in the year for those 60 games, 60 or 80, I can't remember exactly, but it kind of went back to the same old thing that the Braves have seen over the last couple of years where it's kind of just a turnstile out there in left field. We're seeing different guys, it seems like, out there in that spot every couple of games. And so, ever since Jurickson Profar has been back from his suspension, along with Michael Harris being much better since the All-Star break, he's been one of the best outfielders in baseball since the break. Ronald Acuna Jr. did go down. He's DHing now, but, if they can find a way to get Michael Harris to stay at the level he's at and can get Ronald Acuna Jr. back healthy, and then Jurickson Profar provide that stability out in left field, the Braves might have a pretty solid outfield for the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something that we kind of talked about coming into the season. If these guys stayed healthy, Ronald, Michael Harris, and Jurickson Profar, Braves had the opportunity to have one of the best offensive outfields in baseball. And obviously, Michael Harris and Ronald Acuna play really good defense as well. So hopefully they can stay healthy and they can continue to carry that momentum into 2026. Last night, Wade's Astros kicked off a 3-game series down in Houston against the visiting Colorado Rockies, and it was the visiting Rockies defeating Houston 6-1 last night. The Rockies get home runs, from a 2-run homer from Hunter Goodman, their all-star off Hunter Brown, and Mickey Moniak drives in 3 as the Rockies take game 1 of that series. The Astros have lost 2 in a row, and losers 6 of their last 10, and they currently hold a 1.5 game lead over the Seattle Mariners atop the AL West standings. And Calvin, I mentioned this just really quickly last week. I watched the Mariners series against the Mets, particularly the game in the Little League Classic on Sunday Night Baseball a couple weeks ago, and it just seems like nobody really wants to stake claim to that AL West per se and run away with it.
Yeah, Wade and I talked about this yesterday. The Astros have kind of been on a little bit of a slump here recently. Obviously, Seattle has Cal Raleigh, who just jumped Aaron Judge to be the favorite to win the American League MVP. Wade and I, agreed yesterday that at this point in the year, when the division race is that tight, you hardly ever say that every game in a 162 game season matters. But at this point in the year, with the division race that close, sometimes it can be the difference in playing in the wild card and playing in the divisional round. Obviously, you don't want to play in that wild card round if you can avoid it. So it seems like every series, every game from here on out until the regular season is over, is very important for Houston to kind of, claim that division title, book that automatic spot in the playoffs.
Diving into our news and notes really quickly here across the world of Major League Baseball. Yesterday, right when the MLB announced its 2026 schedule, some other news, some engagement news across the world, per se, world of sports between Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift came out. But the MLB did release its 2026 schedule yesterday afternoon, and the 2026 season will begin on Wednesday, March 25th, with a standalone Sunday night matchup as the Giants are going to host the Yankees at Oracle Park. Aaron Judge returning to the Bay Area, his home for a Thursday night game. Just a reminder that the All-Star Game, the 96th edition, will take place next summer, July 14th at Citizens Bank Park. It will be the first time the Phillies have held the All-Star Game festivities since 1996. So in the first at Citizens Bank since it opened in 2007. Obviously, there's going to be some interleague matchups to take place as well. Obviously, Yankees and Dodgers is one to keep an eye on as well. Cubs and Red Sox taking place at Fenway. Particularly when it comes, to rivalry weekend, May 15th through May 17th is the date next year. Obviously, that is Yankees and Mets, Cubs, White Sox, Royals and Cardinals, Rangers and Astros, and the Dodgers and the Angels taking place. Important note, the A's will also continue their season next year in Sacramento, but they will play two series in Las Vegas as they begin to journey to their new home. That will be June 8th through 10th versus the Milwaukee Brewers in June 12th through 14th. Particularly when it comes to the Braves schedule, Calvin, that's what we really care about. The Braves will open at home for this the third time since their ballpark, Truist Park, opened down in Atlanta in 2017. They will open up with the Kansas City Royals on a 6-game homestand that also includes a visit from the visiting Athletics. They'll also have home games for Memorial Day, July 4th, and Father's Day weekend. They will close their season down in Miami. So, the season, 2025 season is about to close, particularly for us Braves fans, but it's looking nice to look forward to, I guess, the 2026 season and who's on the docket.
Yeah, I never realized how less. I don't know how to phrase this. It seems like they never start the season at home, and it never makes sense because it seems like every year they start on the road and they always lose. Like last year they started.
You want the nice weather.
Yeah, and like last year they started, 0-7 or 0-8 or whatever it was, and you know, people, Braves fans were kind of throwing in the towels then. If you're going to lose on opening day, at least, you don't want to do it at home, but at least you can kind of get that packed out house at home. And, it seems like the Braves, kind of like I said, when they do start on the road, it seems like they always lose on opening day, especially over the last couple of years. So, getting a home opener on game number one and maybe picking up a win will, be something that Braves fans haven't got to enjoy in a couple of years.
Yeah, and moving quickly to the NL East, obviously the Mets and the Phillies are the 1-2, or I guess the Phillies and the Mets are the respective 1-2 atop the NL East standings. They're battling in Flushing, Queens. I mean, the Mets let me speak English. The Mets took the first two games of that series. They had a walk-off win, or comeback win rather, last night against the Phillies. And Calvin, it seems like the Braves or the Mets kryptonite. The Phillies or the Braves kryptonite. Like, it just seems like it just goes back and forth, and the Mets don't ever lose to the Phillies. So it seems like there's just a lot of going on in the National League East per se.
Yeah, it seems like throughout the season, the only teams that the Braves have been able to beat consistently are the Mets and the Marlins. I saw a stat, I think it was yesterday. The Mets spent nearly $1 billion in free agency payroll going into this
Yeah.
season, and the Braves are having one of their worst seasons in something like the last 20 years. And the Braves have still won, I believe, the last 8 series against the Mets. Throughout the first half of the season, it seemed like that was the only team the Braves could beat was the Mets. I believe they swept them the first series they played, and then they would take 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 against the Mets every series they played throughout then. And, the last couple of series against the Marlins, they've kind of beaten up on Miami. We talked about last night and today's scores. The Braves, barring anything, unforeseen, it would kind of fit the narrative of the 2025 Braves if they did give up this lead. But, barring anything unforeseen, the Braves are going to pick up back-to-back big wins over Miami. Right now they've got a 7-game lead on the Washington Nationals for fourth place in that NL East. They're only 2 games behind Miami. So after today, that'll move to 1 game. Maybe the Braves can kind of sneak up into that third place spot in the AL East. Miami's 9 games behind the New York Mets. So, unless the Mets, absolutely hit a slide like they have been over the last, month or two, it'd be kind of, nice for the Braves to finish in the top 3 in that division since they've been kind of flirting with that fourth and fifth spot over the last month or two.
Some injury notes here across Major League Baseball. One of them was a big one down in the state of Texas. Texas Rangers, right-hander Nathan Eovaldi is likely done for the season because of rotator cuff strain. Another blow to the Texas Rangers' hopes as they're looking to make a late push to playoff spots. Eovaldi is 11-3 on the year with a career best 1.73 ERA in 22 starts. He was among one of the favorites to compete with Garrett Crochet and Tarek Skubal for the AL Cy Young. This was a guy that was a free agent this past season. He's 35 years old and just had a fantastic season. So unfortunate news for the Rangers as they look to try to make a playoff push in the AL for a wild card spot. The Yankees, we've talked about them routinely struggling this year with a lot of pitchers per se going on the injury list, and that continued on Tuesday where a key left-handed reliever Alex Vesia was put on the injured list with an oblique strain. It said he felt very tight after the game last night against the Reds, which the Dodgers won 6-3. He'll be first eligible to come off the injured list on September 7th. The bullpen is, starting to get healthy a little bit for the Dodgers. Kirby Yates and Tanner Scott both returned over the last couple of days, and Michael Kopech is expecting a return. But the Dodgers have continued to struggle with injuries when it comes to their pitching staff. Another note here really quickly, the suspension has finally been handed out. I'm sure everybody saw the tirade that Cardinals catcher Wilson Contreras threw after being ejected by the home plate umpire the other day in the 6 win over the Pittsburgh Pirates. The first baseman was suspended 6 games and fined an undisclosed amount. So the penalty levied for Wilson Contreras after he had to be restrained by his coaches after, I believe, a strike 3 call in that matchup on Monday against the visiting Buccos. Last night, really quickly, First Horizon Park, it was the Charlotte Knights defeating the Nashville Sounds 7-3. 2 Sounds in particular to keep of note, both making rehab assignments for the best record in baseball, leading Milwaukee Brewers. That is Jackson Churio and Reese Hoskins. Churio went 0-for-4 last night, and Hoskins went 3-for-4 with 2 doubles. So those are your quickly ran through news and notes across Major League Baseball. Coming up, as we have hit the 3 o'clock hour on Main Street Sports Today and transitioning to our final hour of the show, we'll get into the grab bag as we dive into the news and notes across the world of sports. So stay with us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
Is your internet slowing you down? It's time for an upgrade. Whether you're at home, working from your home office, or at your business, it's time to unleash the speed you need with speeds up to 1 gig at CPWS for as low as $70 a month. Give us a call, 931-375-7777. Local service, local support, CPWS.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back in as the second hour of Main Street Sports Today on a Wild and Wacky Wednesday, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson, coming to you from the press box here, overlooking First Horizon Park as the Nashville Sounds look to continue their homestand against the visiting Charlotte Knights. That is Calvin White coming to you from his respective home up in Clarksville. It's time to dive into the latest edition of the Grab Bag as we talk regional, local, and national sports of all varying topics. And Calvin, and forgive me, producer Mark, I put down a list of things, but some news has come out in the world of NFL since we have booked the show and come on air. And it's some big news for Ravens safety Kyle Hamilton, the former Notre Dame alum, the first-round pick, has agreed to a 4-year, $100.4 million contract extension with $82 million guaranteed, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. That is the largest contract for a safety in NFL history. Since being selected with the number 14 pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, Hamilton has become a staple of the Ravens defense. He's played in 48 games, including 36 starts, combined to make 250 tackles, 18 for loss, 7 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, and 5 interceptions. So, Calvin, one of the best players in the NFL. Thanks for Mark for pulling up the photo. The NFL, Calvin, gets paid.
Yeah, he's been really good in that Ravens secondary. Over the last couple of seasons, he's been one of the key players that makes, that Baltimore defense arguably one of the best in the NFL. He's been in the league 3 years. He's already a 2-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time All-Pro player out there for the Ravens ever since coming out of Notre Dame. Obviously the Ravens value him. They're trying to keep that core together as long as they can to try to make a run at that Super Bowl in that playoff run that's kind of eluded them since they drafted Lamar Jackson.
And, as a Notre Dame fan, I guess the resident Notre Dame fan of Main Street Sports Today, ever since he was a Golden Domer, I knew, and I think Notre Dame fans knew how special he was. So it's richly deserved for a player of his talent and magnitude. Couldn't ask for it for a better person as well. And it just seems kind of fitting with all the great Ravens teams of the past. Obviously nowadays they have Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, etc., Mark Andrews, great offensive weapons. But the Ravens teams the past were hard hitting, hard nosed, gritty defenses, obviously led by all time great Ray Lewis at the linebacker position. Terrell Suggs on the defensive line, and obviously Ed Reed, the ball hawk in the secondary. So it's fitting per se that one of the highest paid, I guess the highest paid safety in NFL history is the Baltimore Raven that plays on the defensive side of the ball. So congrats to Kyle Hamilton. Feel free to send some donations to Nashville, to Calvin and I. We would appreciate just a little chunk of that $100.4 million. But once again, congratulations to Kyle Hamilton, become the highest paid safety in NFL history. Calvin, obviously you and Wade dove into today in your grab bag. It's NFL cut day. It's waiver claims. All those things are happening as we inch closer to the NFL season. We also had some trade action over the last day, and one of them is a very significant note. As a former Viking per se is heading home, and that is Adam Thielen. According to ESPN, Adam Thielen is being traded from the Carolina Panthers to the Minnesota Vikings. The Panthers will receive a 2026 fifth-round pick and a 2027 fourth-round pick, while the Vikings will get Thielen and a conditional 2026 seventh-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. Obviously, Calvin, Adam Thielen had a very great year alongside Justin Jefferson up in Minnesota, teaming up with Kirk Cousins. And this is a vital move for the Vikings, who, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, will be without Jordan Addison for the first couple games of the season due to his suspension.
Yeah, it was big for the Vikings, and JJ McCarthy, who's going to be a first-year starting quarterback up there. After Jordan Addison went out, or it was determined he was going to be out for the first couple of games of the season, it was kind of a question mark who the Vikings were going to pick up and who JJ McCarthy was going to throw to outside of Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen caught for a little over 1,000 yards his first year with Carolina 2 seasons ago, but only caught for 615 yards last year. Two-time Pro Bowler. He was second-team All-Pro back in 2017 when the Vikings, were kind of lighting up the scoreboard with him and Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph, all those guys, Kirk Cousins. So it was big for Minnesota to kind of get another veteran receiver back in there on that roster, just for JJ McCarthy to kind of get comfortable in his first year as a starter and also not put all the pressure on Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, absolutely. So a former Viking returning home to pair, obviously, what you mentioned with a talented young quarterback who unfortunately suffered an injury last year in the preseason. So I know a lot of people are looking forward to seeing what JJ McCarthy can do, obviously, with the weapons to come on that Viking side of the ball, and one of the best offensive minds in the game with Kevin O'Connell calling the plays. Another trade that occurred just over the last couple the days within the NFL. And it's of note for Titans fans, as the Jacksonville Jaguars have added to their receiving room, pairing up with the Lions to trade for wide receiver Tim Patrick for a 2026 sixth-round pick. Patrick at 6'5", 210, one of the tallest and heaviest wide receivers on that Jacksonville roster now. Obviously, they're looking to pair receivers for Trevor Lawrence. They have Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, who set the world on fire last year as a rookie, became a really reliable target. Obviously, they drafted Travis Hunter moving up in the draft with Cleveland to get him. Obviously, he's a guy who's going to have packages per se on offense and also play some defense as well. But, the Jaguars looking to add weapons around Trevor Lawrence, who, is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, but doesn't or has not necessarily played like it over the last couple of years.
Yeah, the last couple seasons, it seems like the Jaguars haven't really had a legitimate threat at receiver outside of Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley before he came over and became an Atlanta Falcon and eventually a Tennessee Titan. But, like you said, Trevor Lawrence, one of the highest paid quarterbacks, but hasn't really played like it over the last couple of years. Ever since the Titans made that run to the AFC Championship game a couple years ago, before losing to Patrick Mahomes, after that run that the Titans made, it kind of seems like the Texans have, pretty much dominated the division ever since then. The Colts are still trying to figure out what's going on with their quarterback position. They named Daniel Jones the starter last week. It kind of looks like the Anthony Richardson experiment is over up in Indianapolis. For a while, ever since the Titans made that run, it seems like the AFC South has been arguably the worst division in football. When you look at the bottom three of the Titans, Colts, and Jaguars, with the Texans kind of dominating that division over the last couple of years with ever since they drafted CJ Stroud. They've just been explosive on both sides of the football. And, the Jaguars, getting Tim Patrick, getting another receiver that could potentially be a threat for Trevor Lawrence is going to be big for that offense this year. And, maybe for the Jaguars, they can kind of get back into being a respectable and competitive football team.
Yeah, over 4 seasons with Denver and over 5 seasons total. 4 seasons with Denver and 1 with Detroit. Patrick has 176 career catches for 2,403 yards and 15 touchdowns, 33 receptions for 394 yards, and 3 scores last year in Detroit. Moving on, Calvin, we've talked about her several times over the last couple of weeks on the show, and that's Venus Williams playing in the U.S. Open up in New York in Flushing, Queens. She lost last night in her opening round match against Karolina Muchkova. She pushed the number 11 seed all the way through, lost in 3 sets, 6-3, 2-6, 6-1. And, Calvin, this is 45-year-old Venus Williams going out there and compete against, some of the best in the world. And, she still has that drive per se and that fire. Obviously, she was invited as a wild card entry into the tournament, dropping the first set per se, but coming back to win the second one. So I don't know per se if you watched the match last night, but what does it say for you about Venus Williams still having that drive and fire to come out there and show what she's made of per se?
Yeah, we talked about this, I believe, when it was first announced that she was going to play. We kind of grouped her in that same conversation with her sister Serena and Tiger Woods, people that, not necessarily were the greatest players, toward the twilight of their career and necessarily at their age. Obviously, golf is a lot different than tennis in terms of comparing her to Tiger Woods, but, anytime you can see one of the all-time greats still be able to play at a high level, at the age that she's at. We talked about Tom Brady earlier. We saw Tom Brady play well into his mid-40s and, win Super Bowls still. Won a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But anytime you can see one of the all-time greats still put on a solid and respectable performance later in their career and at the age that she's at, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Her second set win over Muchkova last night, it marked the first time that Williams had won a set at the U.S. Open since 2019, her first set victory at a Grand Slam since Wimbledon in 2021. The match was just the third Williams of this year who hadn't played in a Grand Slam since the 2023 U.S. Open. She made her first appearance of the 2025 season at the DC Open on July 23rd after taking away time for tennis in part to tend to her health. So happy to see her back. She became the second oldest woman to win a tour-level singles match when she defeated 23-year-old Peyton Starnes in the first round. So I guess it's just a pleasure to have her back. I mentioned it time and time again on the show. The Williams sisters are mentioned in the same breath as Tiger Woods when it comes to the world of tennis, like the impact that they have on those that watch. So happy to have Venus back out there doing what she loves per se and showing that she still has that drive and that will to compete. Something that you passed along to me earlier today, Calvin. I know you're more of the golfing expert on the show than I. The Ryder Cup pairings and the captains have come out, and for the first time, there's some history here. The first time since 1963, the playing captain for the United States, who's Keegan Bradley, will not play in the event. So, Calvin, feel free to kind of dive into this. You're the more knowledgeable expert than I, per se. But some big news and some historic news with Keegan Bradley deciding he will not serve in playing when they head to Bethpage Black in September.
Yeah, this was by far the biggest storyline kind of heading into Ryder Cup selection. Um, when Keegan Bradley was named Ryder Cup captain, he said the only way he would serve as a playing captain is if he qualified on points. The top 6 in Ryder Cup points automatically qualify for the team. Obviously, the captain gets to pick the final 6 players to fill out the 12-man team. When former captain Zach Johnson left Keegan Bradley off the team 2 years ago, that was one of the best seasons that Keegan Bradley had in a while. And it was the first season in a while where he had a legitimate chance to make the team. Did not qualify on points that year and was obviously left off the team by Zach Johnson. But when Keegan Bradley said that he was only going to play if he qualified on points, and he had the year that he had, I believe he's the 11th ranked player in the world right now. So he had a year that was very justifiable if he wanted to pick himself to play on the team. But from everything that's been reported and been coming out, he kind of wanted to avoid that distraction of being if he would have picked himself to play on the team, he would have been the first playing captain since Arnold Palmer in 1963. He's also the youngest Ryder Cup captain since Palmer in 63. So he kind of wanted to avoid some of that distraction as being the first playing captain since one of the all-time greats in Arnold Palmer. Obviously, if nobody's seen this yet, the automatic picks or the automatic qualifiers for the U.S. Ryder Cup team were Scotty Scheffler, J.J. Spaun, Xander Schauffele, Russell Henley, Harris English, and Bryson DeChambeau. This morning, Keegan Bradley selected Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Ben Griffin, Cameron Young, Patrick Cantlay, and Sam Burns to fill out that United States Ryder Cup team. All of those guys have Ryder Cup experience except for Ben Griffin and Cam Young. Justin Thomas, he's going to play in his 4th straight Ryder Cup. The United States hasn't won the Ryder Cup since 2021, I believe it was. The European team is looking absolutely stacked with the likes of Rory McIlroy and Justin Rose, Shane Lowry, Tommy Fleetwood, who just won the FedEx Cup playoffs, all over there on that squad. The Europeans have kind of dominated the Ryder Cup over the last 20, 25 years. So it'll be really good for the U.S. to, go get a win this year. Obviously have a home field advantage with it being at Bethpage Black up in New York. So it'll be a big year if Keegan Bradley and the boys can bring home a win for the United States Ryder Cup team.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our last thing here, latest edition of the Grab Bag. We've talked a lot on this show about the WNBA, obviously richly deserved with the season that they've had, obviously breaking the regular season attendance already. And one of its former stars has come out, particularly talk about its current star. As you see on your screen right there, it is Caitlin Clark, who just missed her 16th consecutive game with injury. And Lisa Leslie, obviously the former WNBA legends, came out and made some news saying that the Fever should shut down not only Caitlin Clark for the rest of the regular season, but the playoffs as well. Caitlin has suffered a bone bruise in her left ankle, obviously has dealt with a growing injury as well. This was Leslie talking to CBS Sports. We Need to Talk. She could provide an amazing boost, but again, I'm not going to put my coach's hat on or my GM hat on. If you want to see Caitlin Clark for the longevity of her career, I'm just thinking, me personally, I would not put Caitlin Black out on the floor this season. The Fever currently clinging to the 6th spot in the playoff race, face a critical stretch with 6 games remaining in the regular season. So obviously, her absence, you saw it there with the numbers on the screen that Mark has, the 8 and 5, averaging just close to 88 points a game. Without her, 11 and 13, just shy of 84 points a game. Rebounds as well. We don't particularly think of Caitlin Clark as, a monster rebounder per se. But this is one of the face of the league, no doubt, and just the impact that she has on our team. I can see it both ways. As a fan and as somebody who wants to see women's basketball continue to flourish, you want Caitlin Clark, to be healthy for the majority of her season. But also at the same time, you want to see her play in the playoffs as well. So I guess this is a tough decision and something that the Fever are going to have to discuss per se, Calvin.
Yeah, I kind of also see it both ways. The Fever are inside the playoff picture right now, and obviously in any sport, if you make the playoffs, you at least have a shot of winning the championship. But you don't want it to be a situation where Caitlin Clark has something minor, and then you go into the playoffs and she you put her out there on the floor and it turns into something a lot worse than what it is right now, and then she's out for a lot longer extended period of time. Obviously, like you said, she's the face of the league, or at least one of the faces of the league, along with players like Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, players like that. So obviously we saw attendance and TV viewership grow exponentially ever since Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, Paige Beckers, all those players came into the league. So we want to, in any sport, you want to keep your stars on the court and on the field as much as you can. Fever, obviously, a little bit worse without her on the floor, kind of according to that graphic. But yeah, don't want to rush her back. But kind of on the flip side of that, if you're in the playoffs, you have at least a shot to win the championship. So it'll be a difficult decision for the Fever to make if they do end up finishing on the inside of that playoff picture and do end up making the playoff bracket.
That'll do it here on the latest edition of the Great Grab Bag on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Coming up after the break, no Heather Williams for her weekly segment. It is NASCAR Playoff Media Day as the 16 playoff drivers prepare to take on Darlington Raceway here this weekend as they kick off the 12 Cup race of the 12 race. 10 race chase of the NASCAR Sprint Cup. I'm supposed to be the know-it-all, Calvin, and I just butchered it. So we'll look forward to talking a little NASCAR despite that here just across the break, and we'll also preview the upcoming Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix for the INDYCAR series here at National Superspeedway this weekend here in the Lebanon area. So stick with us here on Main Street Sports today. We'll be right back.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
They walk among us, but at 240 miles per hour, they become something more. They're thrill seekers, risk takers, and maybe just a little bit unhinged. Buckle up. This new era of speed, this racing revolution, it's just getting started.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back in as Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports, today presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson, coming to you from the press box here, high atop First Horizon Park, as the Nashville Sounds look to continue their 6-game homestand versus the visiting Charlotte Knights. That's Calvin White coming in from her respective home up in Clarksville. Calvin, no Heather Williams this week per se, but we'll continue our weekly Wednesday NASCAR segment and throwing a little INDYCAR as that racing and motorsport heads to Nashville Super Speedway this weekend. And Calvin, I don't know if you caught any of Saturday's regular season finale on the high banks of Daytona International Speedway, but it's obviously intriguing for NASCAR, Calvin, when it comes to their playoff format, the win and in per se, if you're within the top 30 in points, and a lot of drama came as a stake in the final closing laps of that race on Saturday. You have Cole Custer, who's had a really disappointing season, in contention for the win on the last lap. You got Justin Haley in contention. You have Daniel Suarez, all guys looking to race their way into the NASCAR Series playoffs. And it's not either of those guys who capture the checkered flag down at Daytona. It's Penske and former champion Ryan Blaney going from 13th to the lead in the final couple laps to win the race in Daytona, picking up his second win of the season. His first coming here in Nashville in the Cracker Barrel 400 earlier this year. So Penske getting 3 of its cars, obviously, in the playoffs with Austin Cindric winning earlier this season, with Joey Logano winning as well, and then obviously with Ryan Blaney. So it's Blaney with all the controversy. I guess the scrutiny of what's to come and who's going to make the playoffs. Is it Alex Bowman or Tyler Reddick going to get bumped? It's Ryan Blaney capturing the checkered flag on Saturday down in Daytona, helping secure Alex Bowman a spot in the playoffs. So, Calvin, I don't know if you watched any of the race, but if you did, give me your thoughts.
I did not watch any of the race. This is usually what we have Heather for. You and Heather can kind of go back and forth on this stuff. I do my best. I try to pitch in when I can. But it says with Blaney's victory in the final regular season race, the Ford contingent awoke from an 11-week slumber, dating back to Blaney's win on June 1st at the Nashville Super Speedway. In each of the last 3 seasons, Team Penske drivers have emerged from summer doldrums to prevail in NASCAR's postseason. The difference this year is that Blaney has shown consistent speed throughout the year without the victories to show for it. And when we talked to Heather last week, we kind of talked about some storylines going into the NASCAR playoffs. And, she kind of said that, she was expecting chaos. So it seems like, after the final regular season race going into the playoffs, we're going to get some of that chaos that Heather kind of predicted last week.
And what you read just kind of summed it up perfectly. Mark can continue to leave that picture on the screen for us. Penske and Ford in particular, it seems like they do kind of have these dips throughout the summer where they're kind of heading into the playoffs and you want to write them out. They have not shown as much speed as they would like to per se, but when it comes to the NASCAR playoff schedule, particularly when Atlanta in years past was on the playoff, it was the first race of the playoffs for a couple of years. It seems like those kind of drafting tracks, Atlanta, short tracks, Bristol, we're going to head to there in a couple of weeks with the Bristol Dye race. And obviously Phoenix being the regular season finale for this year. It seems like those tracks really suit Ford in particular and Penske, and not only the driving styles of Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano per se, but the equipment that they have. So obviously heading up to Darlington this weekend, Ford is going to be a contention there as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that first race of the NASCAR playoff schedule. So I mentioned, as Mark, you can feel free to take away on that graphic. Heading into Darlington this week, it's the first race of the round of 12, the round of 16. Excuse me, let me get it right. And just kind of break down really quickly those 16 drivers that are going to race for the cup per se. That's going to end here in Phoenix at the end of the regular season. Obviously, you have Alex Bowman, the 16 seed, coming from Hendrick Motorsports. You have Austin Dillon, who won his way in with the walk-off win per se at Richmond 2 weeks ago, coming in as the 15th seed. You have Tyler Reddick of 2311 Sports, who clinched it just on points. Really shocking to get to this point of the season. And Tyler Reddick of 2311 Racing, owned by Denny Hamlin and co-owned also by Michael Jordan, not to be in victory lane, but he's someone definitely to keep an eye on at Darlington this weekend with 12 starts and 6 top 10s and 4 top 5 finishes. The 13 seed, Josh Berry here from Hendersonville, Tennessee, won his way into the playoffs all the way back at Las Vegas at the beginning of the year. So something to keep an eye on, obviously, with an affiliation and alliance with Penske Racing at Ford. Joey Logano is the 12th seed. He picked up the win at Texas earlier this year. Look for him to be strong, obviously, on the mile and a half at Las Vegas as well, and Martinsville and Phoenix as well. Never count out Penske when it comes to the playoffs. The 11th seed coming in with 2,007 points. It's Ross Chastain of Trackhouse Racing based here in Nashville, Tennessee. Remember, Ross picked up the win in the Coca-Cola 600 back in May on the Memorial Day weekend, going from last to first, starting last, and parking it in victory lane. He's definitely somebody to also keep an eye on as well here at Darlington this weekend. The 10th seed is Austin Cindric of Ford, picked up the win at Talladega earlier this season. He's also the defending race winner at Worldwide Technology Raceway up in the St. Louis area, which is one of the playoff races in that first round. So Cindric looking forward to maybe going repeat. Somebody that's, kind of, as Heather mentioned the last couple of weeks, but had to like chase his way into the playoffs. It's Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace had usually hit his way into the event. Now he won his way in the event with the win at the Brickyard 400. Obviously, look forward to him getting to Talladega, a place that he's won before at and runs really well, and then Kansas Speedway, which 2311 always historically runs well there. Another Toyota in the playoffs is Chase Briscoe for Joe Gibbs Racing, obviously won at Pocono. You got Chase Elliott, the 7th seed from Hendrick Motorsports, driving the Chevrolet, won at Atlanta, which is Echo Park Speedway. Shane Van Gisbergen, obviously the road course ace, with 4 wins on the season, wins at Mexico City, Chicago, Street Course, Sonoma, and Watkins Glen. Really interested to see if he can work his way in the playoffs, Calvin. Obviously, the tracks that are in the round of 16, Arlington, Worldwide Technology Raceway, and Bristol are not road courses per se, do not fit his driving style. But with the Roval being in the playoffs, that is something to keep an eye on for Shane Van Gisbergen as well. The 5th seed in the playoffs is Christopher Bell from Joe Gibbs Racing. I think every year we ask ourselves, is this the year, Calvin, that Christopher Bell can win a championship? Obviously, he has a speed with Joe Gibbs backing. He won on the first race down at Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta, also ran at the Circuit of the Americas in Phoenix, but has not been a victory lane since the early part of the season. We mentioned Ryan Blaney winning at Nashville in the Cracker Barrel 400 in June, last weekend of May, sorry. He's the 4 seed going in with 2,026 points, also won at Daytona. You got Denny Hamlin coming into as the 3 seed with wins at Martinsville, Darlington, Michigan, and Dover. The 2nd seed in the playoffs is William Byron, the regular season champion of Hendrick Motorsports, wins in the Daytona 500 in Iowa. And obviously the top overall seed is Kyle Larson coming into the playoffs with 2,032 points, wins at Homestead, Bristol, and Kansas. So just ripped through a bunch of names, Calvin. But like I said, as a fan of NASCAR, this is the best time of the year when the playoffs can start, and the best drivers in the world, in their eyes, and my eyes probably too, are going to go race for a championship.
Yeah, and then just to kind of give everybody a little bit of a refresher on the playoff format, the playoffs will consist of 4 rounds, beginning with the round of 16 at Darlington Raceway, Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway, and Bristol Motor Speedway. The round of 12 will encompass New Hampshire Motor Speedway, Kansas Speedway, and the Charlotte Motor Speedway at Roval. The round of 8, meanwhile, will include Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Talladega Super Speedway, and Martinsville Speedway. The championship 4 will occur at Phoenix Raceway.
Really good stuff right there. And, if you're looking for some motorsports action, you don't have to go too far this weekend if you're in the mid-state. The Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix is taking on the banks of Nashville Super Speedway this Sunday as the IndyCar gets its regular season finale here in the streets of Nashville. Obviously, it used to be a road course race through downtown Nashville per se, there's an opportunity to win some tickets. You're still looking to get out to Wilson County and the Gladeville area for the event. Obviously, with the Titans construction going on in their new stadium, the IndyCar can't race around per se Nissan Stadium and through the streets of Nashville. So the last couple of years, they've headed out to the racetrack. Looking forward to covering that with Blaine Color this weekend on Main Street. Perhaps really quickly going to run you through this weekend's schedule out at Nashville Superspeedway. Obviously, I guess the thrill of crowning a champion and having the mystique of that going into the race is kind of gone. Alex Palou, the 28-year-old from Barcelona, Spain, has already clinched the IndyCar championship. But I know a lot of locals are looking forward to having Joseph Newgard, the Hendersonville native, the multi-Indianapolis 500 winner, back in his home state and racing here on the streets, or I guess around the concrete of Nashville. On the schedule, on Sunday, August 31st is obviously when the race begins. Gates open to the public at 9 a.m. They will close at 4 p.m. There's an autograph session for fans at 9:30 to 10:15 for the NTT IndyCar Series. The pre-race party starts at 12 p.m. Driver intros from 1 o'clock to 1:20, and the green flag in there will go in for the Bruschetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix at 1:45 to 225 lap race. Really quickly on Saturday, moving backwards, feel free obviously to go out for qualifying. That is 1:05 start time. That usually lasts an hour as well. So also Saturday night, there will be a Saturday night pit stop in the Glades 1 campground area for all fans that have a parking pass at 7 o'clock. So looking forward to having IndyCar returning to the Music City, hopefully put on some good racing. Colin Herta is your defending race winner. And so, Calvin, it's pretty cool. Even for the NASCAR guys, when racing comes to Nashville Superspeedway, there's no fitting trophy then, as you see in that graphic, for the winner to walk away with a guitar when it comes to Music City.
Yeah, the Nashville Superspeedway, ever since NASCAR returned there a couple years ago, it seems like the Superspeedway always fills up, always has big crowds. It's a really cool environment. Even if you're just driving by it, like on the interstate or something like that, you can just hear and feel the environment and all the noise coming out of that Superspeedway. So it's really cool that NASCAR gets to do this late in the year.
Absolutely. So looking forward to, once again, being out there this weekend alongside Blaine Keller, George Page, and Bobby Reynolds. We'll have all your action covered here on our social media channels, our respective ones as well, but also Main Street Nashville, the Chronicle of Mount Juliet, and Wilson Post. So looking forward to providing you guys those coverage. Got to go pick up my credential, Calvin. So that's something I need to put on the docket on Friday before covering some high school football. So coming up after the break, after that concludes our NASCAR and little IndyCar segment, looking forward to having Heather Williams back next week to break down the first race of the NASCAR playoffs. Coming up, it's your favorite part of the show, Calvin. You've already scoured the web. Look for the wildest and wacky stories from across the globe. So looking forward to diving into those next here on Main Street Sports Today as we conclude Wild and Wacky Wednesday with our Wild and Wacky segment. So stay with us here. See you after the break.
Being in Tennessee, we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible, so we have an entire section of our menu that is just dedicated to local whiskeys like Uncle Nearest, Jack Daniels, of course, George Dickel, Nelson Brothers, Greenbrier Whiskey, and all of our taps are all local. From 2 o'clock until midnight, we've got food every day for you guys. A good handful of appetizers, some entrees, and a couple salads and things like that. My name is Ethan Kanata. Please come down and see us at the Pick Lobby Bar here at the Omni in Nashville.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
There's a line that links us all. Most of the time, we don't even think about it, but it's everywhere, illuminating our neighborhoods, empowering our businesses, and helping us to recharge. Whether it comes from our grids, the sun, or a kind heart, we believe in the power of good energy. And as your family and region continue to grow, you can trust that we'll always be there for you. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing good energy.
Welcome back in as Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Calvin scoured the web and done all his research, and he's ready to go as he presents his weekly Wild and Wacky stories, from across the globe. So, Calvin, without further ado, it's a beautiful Wednesday here at Nashville. I'm getting ready for some baseball this afternoon. You got your fishing hat on. It looks like you're ready to go catch a few. So we're not going to hold you up from that. But go ahead and present. I'm going to turn the baton over to you as we dive into the Wild and Wacky stories for this week.
Yeah, this is our signature segment here on Wild and Wacky Wednesday. We got a little help from Wade Neely yesterday. He shot us over some links to a couple of stories. We'll get to those towards the end. But the first story we're going to get to today, headline reads, Mexican Festival's taco serving breaks 3 world records. The lead says, a festival in a Mexican city served 13,215 tacos in 1 hour, and in the process also broke the Guinness World Record for the largest stir fry and the largest frying pan. Says the festival involved a team of 100 culinary students using a 23-foot diameter frying pan to prepare a stir-fried dish which contains sausage, beef, pork, bacon, tomatoes, peppers, onions, and beer. The stir-fry cooked for 3 hours and 40 minutes over a wood fire, and the 5,331 pounds of cooked food were then turned into tacos served to the festival's 10,000 attendees. The event earned 3 Guinness World Record titles, the most tacos served in 1 hour, the largest stir-fry, and the largest frying pan. The leftover tacos from the event were donated to local food banks. So kind of a little bit of a feel-good story here. But also, 13,000 is a lot of tacos, David.
This is something that I would want to be a part of. Normally when we talk about these world records or the wild and wacky stories that you present, it's rodents, it's animals, it's things that I want nothing to be a part of, other than I think it was last week when the hot dogs per se fell on the road and there was just crates of dogs out there. I might have been tempted to take one as a pass by, see some free food per se that you can heat up later, maybe on the side of the road. But this was something I would definitely want to cover and definitely get my hands on some of the food to test the product. I mean, I bet you those tacos tasted really good. And, there's some drinks, beverages I have in my mind that I don't know if I should say on air that I would consume alongside with those tacos to make them go down and wash down a little easier. But this is something cool. And so a world record like that, what you're doing, not only to, feed people per se, but as you mentioned, giving food back to those food banks that need it. That's something that's really encouraging to see, and something that I, as a reporter per se, I'm not going to pretend like I would be the best news reporter, probably not the best sports reporter either, but I would love to maybe partake and get some of that food. And, I couldn't, my mouth would be salivating just watching them cook it up for me and get ready to go. So that's something that's really cool to see.
Yeah, they did have a 23-foot diameter frying pan. Took 3 hours and 40 minutes over. Yeah, took 3 hours and 40 minutes over a wood fire to cook all of that. Just from kind of looking at it, I would assume that it would take a lot longer than, probably not a lot longer, but longer than a little over 3.5 hours to cook all that food. If you're gonna make 13,000 tacos, you want to make sure you don't kill anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this picture that Mark has pulled up for us, and just the food that sits in the middle of that big pan per se. Just imagine the length of, I guess, a spatula, spoon, whatever, that you have to flip it over. So that's impressive. Not only that they had something that big to cook it in, per se, but the equipment to cook the food properly to make sure that it was ready to go. So I don't know if I've ever quite seen something that big for it to cook in, but I guess we're very resourceful people. So when you have an objective in mind, you can do it. But And you see, how my mouth watering now. Like I want some tacos. So hopefully here in the press box menu, maybe it's not Taco Tuesday per se, but maybe they got some tacos on the menu tonight here at First Horizon Park.
Yeah, usually when we do these stories, we talk about people breaking one world record. These people were able to break three. So kudos to them. And I'm sure all of those tacos uh, went to somebody's mouth at least. But kind of moving on to our next story. This one kind of fits our wild and wacky mold a little bit better. A Canadian politician broke a world record by putting 330 neckties on herself. Says, I'm not even going to pretend I know how to say this lady's name, so bear with me. Marwa Rizki, a member of the National Assembly of Quebec, who announced this year that she will not seek re-election in 2026, celebrated her tenure in office by attempting a Guinness World Record on the Canadian TV series Infoman. She had to beat the record of 330. It took 48 minutes for Rizki to reach the previous record with her face just barely showing through. She captured the title by putting on 30 more ties. I just kind of looking at this, I wouldn't assume that somebody has enough body mass to hold 330 ties. Um, but it kind of looks like they stacked all of these on top of each other for the most part. And, she doesn't look like she's struggling, but I think if that was uh, me in that situation, I'd be kind of struggling to breathe a little bit.
Yeah, I would have to ask how many ties she borrowed from different people to get the amount. I know I have quite a collection of ties. I wouldn't say I have a bunch of them, but I have some ties per se, but I definitely don't have as many to set a world record per se. So, I think about this. I know we're in the dog days of summer, and honestly, these nights here in Nashville have started to cool down. I know this person is inside, but I couldn't imagine just being outside per se and putting on 330 ties on my body with how hot it is and just the weight of that and the sweat that would accumulate and perspirate from my body from that. So I guess that was kind of the first thing I thought when all this clothing. I know it's a tie, it's light, is packed on top of her. I know they're in Canada, so it might be obviously feels a little different up there than it is here. But how hot it would be here per se if this was tried, particularly outside.
Yeah, there's a quote from her here in the story. It says, she says, I accepted the challenge of breaking the record for the most neckties worn at once to show that women are equal to men and that women can also wear many ties. Then it says, to help her out, each of the ties were pre-knotted in anticipation of her attempt, and Marwa and the production team practiced wrapping them around her in advance to make sure they had adequate space. So she did this multiple times, not just this one time, just to see if they would all fit.
Yeah, and I guess hat tip to her and to those that helped her. Obviously, this was a record, as you mentioned, that she sought out for herself. All these records that you have shown, Calvin, you have to know firsthand. You just don't do these things without knowing that what the record is and that you want to etch your name into the record book. And I guess the worst part about it is, Calvin, is you send this over to the Guinness Book of World Records, they put yours in, and immediately somebody sees that and they want to one up you. We'll see how long her record stands when it comes to the ties. I also feel really bad for the people that, as you can see with the red tie on the very top, all the people that had to individually tie these ties. And then, so 330, I think was what you said, 330 something ties that they had to tie individually. I can let alone tie one tie correctly and put it on myself. Obviously, these weren't perfect, but I get the gist.
Yeah, it takes long enough for me to tie one by myself, and sometimes we're even lucky to get it tied to where it looks right. But kudos to her. She broke the world record of 330 by 30, so she had 360 ties on right here. But moving on to our next wild and wacky story, this man from, I believe, Greece balanced 511 wine glasses on his head. He's 64 years old, and he balanced these 511 wine glasses on his head for 15 seconds. says this man is a professional glass dancer. Um, and the collection of these glasses collectively weighed about 140 pounds and were arranged with a block with sheets of plywood between the layers. The block was then lifted by a forklift until the man could stand underneath it and take on the weight. He stood with the 511 glasses balanced on his head for 15 seconds before returning the block to the forklift without any of the drink containers falling. So, this is kind of impressive in its own right. But, it would have been a little bit more impressive if there were liquid in each of those glasses. But, this is kind of, or not kind of, but very impressive in its own right, and something personally that I wouldn't even think was doable or possible.
Yeah, I'm impressed by the neck strength that comes from this, right? Balancing that. Obviously, those glasses stacked proportionally really well. I don't know if it's something that I could do. Yeah, I mean, it's very stacked neatly together in one column. If one of those is just stacked, incorrectly, that whole thing is coming down, and you best believe I'm getting out the way. So, like I said, man, like some people are just different than like you and I. Like I don't wake up in the morning and think, what's the wackiest thing I can do or what record I could break. So every time you show one of these, I just get like more astonished what not only people will want to do, but what they're capable of doing as well.
Yeah, the previous record was 319. So he broke this record by almost 200 wine glasses. And I can't imagine how nerve-wracking it would probably be when he gets done standing there with that, and the guy with the forklift comes in to try to get it off of his head, and he's trying to balance, while the forklift guy is trying to get that off his head and try not to, spear him in the side of the dome.
Yeah, did it say, I'm curious, and forgive me if I missed it, how much the weight of all that was?
I believe um, about 140 pounds of glasses on top of his head right
But
there.
that's the thing is it's not like it's on your shoulders. Like, you squat 140 pounds. That's fine. That's lightweight per se. That's straight on the top of the noggin. That's just straight on top of the dome. And so, goodness gracious. And I know he has the little support. He got the little towel over his head per se to be the cushion, but man, that's a lot of weight compressed right down on the top of your head.
Yeah, that's gotta, potentially leave him with some head and neck pain the day after. He might even shrink a little bit.
Yeah, you might be
you're
squished. You might be minute. He lost a couple inches on his height.
Yeah, when you were little, your grandparents would always talk about putting a brick on your head to stop you from growing. This guy, if he wasn't already done growing, he's probably done now after holding 140 pounds of wine glasses on top of his head.
I'll be finding like a good chiropractor, masseuse, massage therapist for that neck and back for putting all that weight on top of his head and down his spine.
Absolutely. And then moving on to our fourth wild and wacky story. This woman has a library book from her grandmother that belonged to, I believe, the San Antonio Public Library. She returned it 82 years after the not the expiration date, but the return date. This library book was returned 82 years after it was borrowed from the San Antonio Public Library. It came with a letter noting that grandma won't be able to pay for it anymore. So essentially, this woman's grandmother borrowed this book from the San Antonio Public Library in 1943, and her granddaughter finally returned it to the public library in San Antonio this past in these last couple weeks. The book was returned 82 years after it was borrowed. The library said in a news release that it eliminated overdue fines in 2021. The inside cover of the book was stamped with the warning that the fine for overdue books was 3 cents a day, not accounting for inflation. The penalty would amount to nearly $900. 3 cents in July 1943 amounts to 56 cents in today's money, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator That would add up to more than $16,000 in late fees today.
Man, wow. That's something. Like I don't even you're gonna have to help me with some words here.
Uh, I don't think there are any. Uh, I'm not someone that checks out library books very often, but
Yeah,
um,
when's the last time you went to a library, Calvin?
it's been a while. Probably, I never checked a book out of the library in college, so probably high school.
Did you even buy your books or did you just go off the PowerPoints?
Oh no, man! I was one of those people that got gypped into buying the books, and then because the professor
Okay.
told you needed them, and then
And
two
then
weeks into
realize
the
that you never had to use them.
halfway through the semester, you never open it one time, then you realize you wasted
Yeah,
some money.
absolutely. They get you. We're getting off topic, but they get you with that. Hey, you're gonna need to read the book. Yeah, no, I don't. You're just gonna preach or not preach. You're gonna teach from the PowerPoint, and that's gonna be it. So, I think the last time I think I go to the library obviously to vote in elections, but I couldn't tell you the last time I actually went down and sat in the library. Probably when I was like a kid to read a book or to work on a project or something. I remember the days. We're probably gonna make Mark feel old. You used to have to go check out a book if you want to do some research because the internet wasn't a thing. Now with the internet being a thing, all your resources that you need are at disposal on the phone. So no need for the library per se. And you can read books on your phone now. Like you can download them on your Kindle or whatever. Like so, those days are long gone.
Absolutely. And moving into our final wild and wacky story over the last 2 minutes of the show, a Tennessee man with the same name as New York Yankees legend Babe Ruth is facing charges alleging that he used the names of hundreds of dead or retired pro baseball players to make phony claims for payouts in class action settlements. George Herman Ruth is charged with 91 counts in the indictment handed out in U.S. District Court in Greenville, Tennessee. On August 12th, the U.S. Attorney's Office announced late last week the 69-year-old from Morristown is charged with mail fraud, aggravated identity theft, fraudulent use of social security numbers, money laundering, making false statements to his probation officer, and possessing firearms after having previously been convicted of felonies. So somebody out there pretending to be the old Babe, is out there stealing people's identities, David.
People not realize that Babe Ruth is dead, long gone. Well, I guess not this one per se. So, I can my name is very common. I don't know how many Calvin Whites there are. There might be a lot, but I know there's quite a few David Wilsons. There used to be one who played in the NFL for the Giants as a running back. So, and I'm the second David Wilson in my family. I'm a junior, so I'll have to blame the original for the name. But yeah, that's interesting, and for it to be in the state of Tennessee of all places, that's funny as well. So. Um, Kudos to Calvin once again. Hat tip to him, a clap to him for scouring the web for the wildest and wackiest stories here on Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Thanks to Matt Stahl from AO.com coming on to continue our SEC previews as we talked a little Alabama Crimson Tide ahead of their Saturday matchup down in Tallahassee against the Florida State Seminoles. Looking forward to having another good show tomorrow as Mo Patton rejoins me on Throwback Thursday. A little coach's corner, and as we get ready and inch closer towards the weekend. Calvin week is done here on Main Street Sports Today. I'll be back with you tomorrow. Until then, so long, everybody. We'll see you next time.